And a very good evening to you, and welcome to today's edition of Politics 101. I'm David Hines. I want to thank you all for tuning in to our program this evening. Of course, it's Thursday evening, coming down to the end of the week. And as usual, in Guyana, there has been lots to talk about in our politics. This week, we are, of course, still talking about the charge that was brought by the police against the alleged shooter of Mr. Orrin Boston. Last night, we had Attorney at Law Nigel Hughes on for an extensive discussion about the ramifications of that case. As you know, it dates right back to last September when ranks of the SWAT team went into the Dartmouth Essequibo home of Mr. Boston and shot and killed him in front of his wife. And there was quite an uproar because it was not the first such killing. In fact, the society may have become tired by then of extrajudicial killings. And it took the police almost 5 months to bring a charge against the alleged shooter. And then when the charge came, it was a charge of manslaughter, not murder, as many people thought, given the evidence that was before us. And so there we have it. Attorney at Law was on last night, Nigel Hughes, laying it out. And the people of Dartmouth once again took to the streets 2 days ago, blocked the Essequibo Public Road, Essequibo Coast Public Road, to vent their anger at what they saw as another instance of injustice. Another instance of injustice. Remember, they took to the streets when a murder occurred, and they were urged by the family, allegedly, after interaction with the government, to promise swift justice. And the people came off the streets. And this time they went back onto the streets. We're going to be talking tonight about that protest and about protest in general. I want to welcome everybody down, and please share the link so that everybody knows that we're on tonight, and we are continuing to talk about the Boston killing and other related issues with our panel tonight. So I want to welcome everyone, and I noticed quite a few of you have come on already. I want to urge you to invite others to join us. I see my sister from one of my hometowns, my sister from Phoenix, Angela. They call her Angie in and around Phoenix. Angie, how are you doing? Good afternoon. And welcome to Politics 101. Savannah, welcome to Politics 101. Wendy, watching from Bartica. Legendary place, the gateway to the interior And I want to welcome you. I see my sister Alison P., who's joining, I assume, from Toronto, but she's an Essequibian from there in Queenstown. You know, there's the story about Queenstown, you know, because we know that Victoria, according to all records, was the first village that was bought by the freed people. People would free themselves from slavery, and the first village that was bought was Victoria. But if you talk to the people of Queenstown, not Queenstown, Georgetown, Queenstown, Essequibo, they will tell you that Queenstown was the first village to be bought. And the historians go back and forth on that. So suffice to say that we have some Queenstownians, Queenstown people in the audience. Sharon, good night. Good night and welcome down. Of course, our man, Mr. Morgan from another part of the country, the Quarantine, Union Village around that area, number 51 area. Union is one of those historic African villages that was bought by the freed people. You know, sometimes people say the freed slaves. And I want to say that our people were never slaves. They were human beings who were enslaved against their wishes. So I want to welcome everyone down to Politics 101. And tonight we're expecting to have quite a show because we're going to be talking about protests and the importance of protests. But as we come on the air tonight, there is breaking news that over $5.2 million in arms found on a ship heading to Guyana. And let me repeat, I'm not the kind of breaking news type, but as I was coming on tonight, this is the breaking news. Over $5.2 million, I assume US dollars, in arms, not human arms, arms as in arms and ammunition. If I may read, Senegal, Africa. You know Senegal? On the west coast of Africa. Law enforcement authorities have seized thousands of ammunition worth $5.2 million from a Guyana registered ship named Eolika, which was heading to Guyana. The ship docked in Dakar, Senegal, in West Africa for refueling when custom agents detected misleading paperwork and conducted a search and discovered the arms. The crew members, said to be Ukrainians, have been detained for questioning. That's the breaking news as we come on the air tonight. We don't know what that means. We don't know if these arms were, the final destination was Guyana, or whether the final destination was the Ukraine, or we don't know much. One of our guests tonight helped to break the news, Rickford Burke. So We're going to ask Rickford what he has found out beyond that. But here we are, $5.2 million in arms found on ship registered as a Guyanese ship. So we've got to lead off with that tonight, because that is breaking news. That is breaking news. That is breaking news. As I said, we don't know what this is all about. It's not the first time, whether it's drugs found on Guyanese registered ships. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know. But that's the breaking news. So please share the link. Share the link. And let's get going with our show. You know, the COVID-19 is still raging. Numbers are going up. More teachers are being infected. The government is still stubborn. It is refusing to meet with the union. People are dying. We heard a baby, an infant, a couple of days old, I think, succumbing to COVID-19. I take the position that things like pandemics, natural disasters, should not be in the realm of politics. Those things should be above and away from politics. I don't like to get into the business that there was more flood under PPP than PNC, and under PNC, I think that kind of nonsense really ought not to be discussed, because natural disasters are natural disasters. I don't like to get in the business of more people dying under the coalition than die under the PPP and vice versa. I really think those things tell us nothing. But we have to talk about the management of natural disasters. The management, not how many people died, and because sometimes you manage the thing properly and depend on if the thing is peaking, the numbers will be higher at one time than the other. So I don't like to get into the business of how many people died under this government and under that government and all that thing. However, we can talk about which government managed these things better. What are the approaches to management? Is one government playing God and not listening to nobody else? Is another government saying this thing is a disaster and we need everybody, regardless of politics, to be involved in managing? Managing a pandemic is not just the Minister of Health coming on every day and saying this and saying that. Management of a pandemic includes the government. It includes our institutions like the schools and the hospitals. It includes the family. It includes the individual. It includes the community. Management of a pandemic includes everybody. And any responsible government would want to coordinate with all those who are affected and all the institutions involved. It is at that point that I indict this government, because it is showing no effort, no intention of properly putting a handle on a pandemic that is a dangerous customer. And so in Guyana, we continue to see tremendous rise in the number of people who are afflicted, and a concomitant rise on the number of people who are dying. This is not to say that I don't hold us citizens responsible, because we ought to be responsible. And I can tell you that some of us are very irresponsible. I don't want to quarrel with people who are not taking the vaccine, because that gets us nowhere. But everything shows that vaccines help. I don't want to quarrel with people, but at least we can wear masks. At least we can avoid the super spreaders. We saw during the Christmas holidays, the PPP friends holding football and other things, and a certain section of the society flocking these things. Same people who cussing the government, gone to the government sport, super spreader sport. If it's St. Jams or Jams and Hits, or I don't know who it is, or Kashif and Shanghai, I don't know these things. I think it's Kashif and Shanghai that had the football story. And if all you're saying that Kashif and Shanghai is PPP, as I heard one of the members of the task force telling the Prime Minister, Mr. Prime Minister, these were PPP events. And the Prime Minister saying, let me don't go there. But the fact is that it was the people who are opposed to the government who were flocking the events and this super spreader. You almost make people trap you all, not because you all like party and sport, every party and sport I must go to. You all gotta get some discipline. We, Black people, gotta get some discipline. We protest on the one hand, and then we enable those people we protested on. We got to make sacrifices, you know. Sacrifices, you got to make sacrifices. If you don't go to a football game or a big sport, you aren't going dead. But if you go there and you pick up the COVID, you put yourself at risk and other people at risk. Black people, you are sometimes very contrary, you know, very contrary. We get the principles right. But when we got to effect the principles, that's where the story goes. You want to drink your beer in a safe environment. You don't got to go to a big sport. Anyhow, I'm saying if we cussing the government for not doing what it's supposed to do with this pandemic, we are right. But we also got to ensure that we don't go to their super spreaders. And we got to talk to we children, we got to talk to we daddy, we got to talk to we sisters and we girlfriends and boyfriends and whoever they may be. We have to talk to people, even when they're stubborn. Anyhow, I just want to say that. Breaking news. $5.2 million in arms and ammunition found on ship registered and headed for Guyana. That's the breaking news. That's the breaking news. Tonight, we're going to talk about protests. We're going to talk about protests. My guests are Sherwin Holder from the Essequibo. He is the new chairman of the PNC, and he is the member of parliament from that area, the Essequibo Coast. I have Mr. Rickford Brock, I think was responsible for breaking that news this afternoon about that ship with the arms and ammunition. And then my brother Kidaki Amsterdam, who is the host of Bostonian Morning Time. Gentlemen, welcome to Politics 101. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Rickford, I think you have to break the news about that ship that they docked there in Senegal.
I'm not sure if I broke the news, but I made an announcement on my Facebook page.
You make it on your Facebook page. Have you learned anything beyond what we seen in that article there?
Well, I won't say yes or no. I know what I'll say is that we have our attorneys from CGID have reached out to the government of Senegal as well as the International Maritime Organization, and what we're trying to ascertain is some information that would give us an idea where this shipment of arms or ammunition, they're all arms, was consigned to. The ship Iorlica is registered to Guyana, and it was on its way to Guyana. There's no question about that. And if you check the International Vessel Finder app, you can see that the next destination from Senegal, the port of Dakar, was the port of Georgetown. As a matter of fact, the ship's equipment has been already programmed to take the ship to Georgetown. So there's no denying, where the ship was heading. What we don't know is what you said, is whether or not that consignment of arms was designated for Guyana. And if it was, that's very troubling, because we have been receiving reports that people have been stockpiling weapons in Guyana. And we see what has been happening on the Essequibo Coast. We saw what happened in Berbice, where the government is sending police officers to shoot down people. And so, we are very concerned about this development. And so we are in touch with the government of Senegal to get some more information, as well as the International Maritime Organization in Geneva, Switzerland.
Right, and I don't want us to jump the gun, as you said.
Right.
I don't want us to jump the gun and to say that we know that these arms were headed to Guyana, and for Guyanese, the final destination was Guyana. We don't know that. We don't know that, These ships sometimes, they're registered to places, but they're not owned by those. You can have, there are places in this world where you have businesses registered, but they have nothing to do with that country. A ship may be registered as a Guyanese ship or headed, and there are all things that happen out there.
I think Dr. Hines, I think what's most important in this is not, I find it's interesting that a ship is registered to Guyana. But what's most interesting here is that it was headed to Guyana. The destination was Guyana. It had arms on it, $5.2 million worth of arms on it. And I think it's incumbent on the government of Guyana to say whether or not it has any knowledge of this arms, whether or not this consignment was for Guyana. Why we have to wait until foreign governments, this is, they have patterned their governance after Donald Trump, where Russia would make an announcement for the US, and Guyana is doing the same thing. You had the American ambassador announcing an agreement to establish a Taiwan office in Guyana. Now you have the Senegalese government making an announcement that arms in a ship designated for Guyana, we don't know where the arms are scheduled to be or was consigned, but that announcement was made by Senegal. And up to now, all day has passed and the government has not said anything, which makes us even more suspicious.
Yes, yes. But as I said, I don't want to jump the gun on this program or any program and say that we know that it was headed to Guyana for them to use to shoot up people. We don't know that. But it is an important development that the government of Guyana, as you said, and I agree with you, the government of Guyana must make a statement on this. They have intelligence, they have diplomatic relations, they have country relations. They can get the information that we cannot get. And so therefore, we want them to say, and that is the importance of what people like you do, what Hidaki and Mark and Sherrod and the rest of us do, is that what they want to cover down under Gobi.
Well, Dr. Hanks, we will get the information. Yes. We will get the information. There's no question about that.
Yes, yes. Hold on. I use a term there, Gobi.
I didn't hear that word for decades.
For the young people in the audience, Gobi. All right. Good. We got that. For the young people, let's move on from the screen there. The young people, a Gobi is a calabash. What people call Gobi. And they say, when you cover something with Gobi, you want to hide them. All right? So I don't want to go and say David Hines, Redford Bork, and Sherwin and Kidaki call somebody Gobi. In fact, in my country, in my village, we had one of our top pastors in the village. His name when we used to go to school was Gobi. My brother pastor, please don't go to the police and say, your brother classmate, David Hines, commit a cybercrime by calling you Gobi. But I was making the point. What they try to cover them under Gobi, we are going to turn up the Gobi and expose it. That's what we do. You know, there's a letter in today's paper from a man who said, I stumbled upon David Hines' show. He was interviewing a man. And David Hines and Rickford Burke and Mark Benshop and Sherrod Duncan, all that is up on the show is the government don't like black people, the government is racist, the government is bad, this, that. But on that show, there was this man, he's a lawyer. And this lawyer gave such a wonderful interview. He was talking about Mayor Robertson and the show that we did last week. And Mayor Robertson was so good. And David Hines asking him questions to get him to say that people are being oppressed. But he gave such a wonderful show. And he should be in the PNC leadership. What a wonderful interview, but the interviewer is not wonderful. The son of a gun. They know that what we do on these programs is quality work. And I have to admit that it's the best interview that he has seen in a long time. But he shan't give the interviewer the credit. These, look, jagabats, is that you all call them? French crapper, you all call them? They're more than that. They're so goddamn dishonest. It crawls the skin. it caused this kid. Anyhow, I'm too talkative tonight. Too talkative. I have guests. And they say when you have guests, you have to let the guests eat before you. But I've been scraven. I want to eat before my guests. Sharon and Kidaki, any comment on this breaking news before we get in the substance? Start with you, Sharon. Any comment on this breaking news?
Good night, Dr. Hines, and good night to your viewers. What I would say on it is that this is very much something that we're accustomed to during the PPP time in office. We've seen these type of things before prior to 2015, and we're back here again. So when I saw the breaking news from my friend Rick Ford there, I actually saw it from him first. I'm amazed how he gets these info.
Yeah.
You know,
The man moving like a
so
ninja.
quickly, so quickly. But I wasn't surprised. I wasn't shocked, but I would say I am concerned. As chairman of the PNC, I am concerned, and the PNC remains concerned, and we're looking at this development very, very closely. Um, we too would want to know if the shipment was actually meant for Guyana, and who are the actors, who are the players, you know, and you would expect that the government would have made some substantive statement on this matter. This is a very important issue. And so at least from the Minister of Home Affairs or some senior government official should have already made a statement on this with regards to whatever information they have on the matter. But it's clear that in these types of matters, you see, wherever they have an interest to protect or they feel that they have something to protect, you don't see them coming out and saying anything to the Guyanese public. This would be considered as negative news, and the government will be seen in a negative light. And so they stay clear from these types of reports.
The comments there of the chairman of the People's National Congress, Sharon Older, back to Amsterdam. Initial comments on this breaking news?
Yes, initial comments, and you know, history is a great teacher. I want to start there. And if we are going to talk about this shipment, we can't talk about it in isolation of the past. Like Sharon said, the PPP, every time the PPP is in power, is in office, political power, Ghana becomes a transshipment point for all kinds of things. The economy was developed under the PPP. The drug trade, drug and guns, because wherever drugs is, you usually find guns. The gun trade was developed under the PPP. We know in the past several people associated with the PPP were caught importing these kind of firearms. These are not small arms. These are not sidearms. These are rifles, long distance weapons. And so it is concerning. Given the type of arms and ammunition, and given the quantity. $5.2 million worth of arms and ammunition is no small amount. You also have to take it in the context of the fact that we know that while the PPP were in office in the past, I know that they're back in office, they have continued to establish paramilitary groups around this country masquerading as security forces, security services. And so if I were to look at the information, they say if it works like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it got to be a duck. The ship is registered to under Guyana. It is destined for Guyana. As a matter of fact, it has an expected arrival, what they call it, ETA, expected time of arrival of 12. That 12 suggests to me midnight on the 28th. So in 8 days' time, that ship would have been in Guyana with all of that arms and ammunition. The information we have picked up, information out there, doesn't say that it has a forwarding destination. There's no indication of that. And so in the interest of security, they say to be forewarned is to be forearmed. in the interest of security, all of us have a right to assume that Guyana is the final destination for that cargo. Rick Ford said it, Sherwin said it, you were saying it. It's the government's responsibility to make a statement of urgency on this situation, right? But more importantly, I think it is the security services responsibility to say to Guyanese what their intelligence is telling them about this shipment. We have the SOCU Special Organized Crime Unit. The Guyana Police Force is responsible to some extent for port security and stuff like that, customs, and they ought to come out and say what they know about this shipment. Because the thing that I know about shipping, somebody has to ship and somebody has to collect. And if a vessel is expected here in 8 days, the manifest, I think they call it, the manifest would have already been in the hands of the authorities in Guyana. And the fact that several hours after this breaking news, you can't hear anything from them suggests to me that there's more in the mortar than the pestle. Guyana is the final destination, and they're trying to cook up another story like they did for Boston.
All right. But again, I say, we are not jumping to conclusions. We are speculating, but we are not jumping to conclusions. Here is what happened. You understand that there is some more information coming out, and the operator has that information ready to share with you, analysts, and the audience. Mr. Operator, it's all yours.
The customs authorities in Senegal have seized 3 containers of ammunition aboard the Guyana-flagged cargo ship. The authorities estimate that the 3 containers are worth an estimated $5.2 million. The discovery was made in the port of Dakar, but the customs agency did not specify the date it happened. Local reports suggest that the crew is Ukrainian. The authorities, however, have not confirmed this. According to specialist website Vessel Finder, the cargo ship had stopped in northern Italy and Spain's Canary Islands before arriving in the port of Dakar. The ship's final destination is unknown. In June 2021, Senegal's navy seized 8 tons of cannabis from a vessel off the coast of the country.
Dr. Hines, if I may.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Rickford. Go ahead, Rickford.
Yeah. So that video was sent to me by a government official in Senegal just now, and I passed it on to your technical people. What I want to say is this. Now, remember what the government said. The government of Senegal in a statement said, based on misleading statements, they were motivated to search this ship. So this is not a legal shipment of arms. This is arms smuggling. Because if it was a legal shipment of arms, arms would have been on the manifest. The declaration would have said arms. They would have showed how it was purchased based on international regulations, and it would have showed where it was destined to. The government of Senegal is saying the ship's crew, when it docked in the port of Dakar, gave them misleading information about the cargo. You can only speculate that they lied. If they give misleading information, to me it's suggesting that they lied about the content in those containers, which then led the government, the authorities, the customs agents in Senegal to search these containers and found this arms. Now, this is arms smuggling, and the ship is destined to Guyana. We don't know if the consignment is also destined to Guyana. If as Kadaki said, there's a shipper and there must be a receiver. And so the government must say whether or not that manifest that covers those 3 containers, it's possible that there were more contents or more cargo on the ship. But those particular containers, the government must say if anyone in Guyana was listed to receive that cargo. It's very important. And I'm pretty sure the US intelligence agencies are jumping all over this because this constitutes smuggling. And then you have it, the crew is Ukrainian. That suggests to me, I don't think Ukraine engages in arms smuggling. That suggests to me that some other country in the region of Ukraine could possibly be responsible here. And there's some other countries we know that have very close ties with the PPP, like where they got the vaccine from and so on. So this is a very concerning development, and the PPP government must be forced to make a statement, a true statement. If not, we should call on government officials in these agencies to leak the information out so the public could be forewarned of whether or not there are persons in Guyana engaging in international arms smuggling.
Yes, we don't know. Remember, Ukraine is a hot spot around. There are lots of talk there about aggression from Russia and so on. All we can say at this point is what we have said thus far. What? I'm not to tell Anil by your name, Colin. All we can say, Guyana, your name, Colin. PPP government, Guyana, name, Colin. That's all we can say for now. We can speculate,
Dr. Hines, those bullets.
but all your name, Colin, Guyana.
Dr. Hines, those bullets are going to weapons. And so we're not sure if those weapons are including in that shipment. But if they're going into weapons and they're going to Guyana, we don't know if they're going to Guyana, but wherever they're going, we know it's international arms smuggling. It therefore means the final destination has the weapons for which those bullets would go into. Very concerning.
We don't know whether Guyana is the final destination.
No, we don't know.
We don't know. We don't know. I want us to be clear about that. I don't want them to say Rickford Burke and Kedaki and Holden Hines causing all kind of hysteria, right? Let me follow the news. If we don't get in front of them, we already spin them up. Meaning, we spin up that a ship with arms and ammunition is headed for Guyana. The ball is in their court. Let me move on. Let me move on. Sharon, your people yesterday morning, or is it yesterday morning, boy, or the day before yesterday? I'm getting old now. Huh?
Day before.
Day before yesterday. The people of Dartmouth once again erupted. They went onto the streets and they blocked the streets in anger, in frustration, in righteous anger over the news that the shooter of Mr. Boston was charged with manslaughter instead of murder. You were there as usual. You were on the ground. Bring us up to date exactly what happened. We can't trust the Chronicle and all these other papers to tell me the truth. So we getting the truth from you tonight. Tell us what happened.
Okay, Dr. Hines. Well, first of all, the family and the community, I believe they're still in grief. And of course, there's a lot of anger and frustration, that of which they vented in the form of protests. I was on the ground. I spoke with the wife. I spoke with Orin's father and several other family members to get a sense of how they're feeling. You know, I know they're frustrated, but to get it directly from them. And I got the sense that they were angry, first of all, because it took almost 5 months for them to see any action whatsoever in this matter. And I don't believe that by any standard is acceptable when one would consider everything that has occurred in the matter. The fact that you knew the shooter was known from the beginning. The evidence, hard evidence, was there to be examined. You had statements from eyewitness in the form of the wife, etc. So I don't believe that 5 months for some movement in this matter is acceptable. And so they were very frustrated with that. I think over the period of those 5 months, the lack of communication from the Guyana Police Force and the government, the family was not able to garner any kind of information or any kind of update from the police force or from the government as to what exactly was happening with regards to the case, except for them being told that, oh, it's with the DPP. Many of their calls went unanswered, calls to the minister, calls to the commissioner, calls to other seniors within the police force. So that also contributed to their frustration and anger. The father expressed to me that he also was very angry with the way they dealt with the shooter, the way in which they dealt with it. They don't believe he looked like a man, like a prisoner, or someone that was a police that was under close arrest. In fact, they would have gotten information that he attended several functions, social events, etc. And they don't think that that was acceptable. That is not something that they could accept. Also, they did mention to me that they were shocked and taken back when they heard that the guy was in court. The police force nor the government made any mention to them. They didn't communicate with them. And so obviously they would have wanted to be there if that was possible. They would have wanted to be in court for that hearing. And so that again also contributed to this second uprising, if you want to call it that.
Yes,
So
and if I may, yes, if I may ask you, Sherwin, you mentioned you spoke to the family, but of course there were other villagers out there. What is the general sentiment in the village? What are people saying? What are they telling you?
People generally feel that the government is part and parcel in this matter. They are colluding. They believe that there is collusion on the government part. This fact again that it took 5 months to get some bit of movement, and in the people's view, they think that the government would have bought themselves some time to cook up whatever they had to cook up, put it together, and then put this guy in court. And then the main thing that angered them and the family, of course, is the fact that the charge was manslaughter rather than murder. Everybody knew that, or everybody knows that it was a murder that was committed. And so at minimum, they expected a murder charge. The villagers and the family expected that a murder charge would have been placed on the accused. And when it goes to court, obviously the court can decide whether it's manslaughter or it's murder. But at minimum, the accused had to be in charge or must be charged with murder. That is the minimum expectation. And once, I must say this, once we remain with that, once the manslaughter charge remains in place, I believe we can expect more protests as the days and months go by.
You can expect more protests as the days and months go by. The police was on the scene. The commander was out there mingling with the protesters. What was that dynamic between the commander and the community, the police and the community there, Sherwin?
I would categorize the protest as a peaceful protest in large measure. Why do I say that? The general public, the pedestrians were allowed, while you had a blockade, obviously it was a blockade to vehicular traffic, but pedestrians were allowed to freely cross the bridge pretty much unhindered. Nobody obstructed them, nobody interfered with them. I don't believe they had any fear whatsoever about moving through the protests. and getting to their destination. I was taken back when I saw a few reports in the media trying to say otherwise, but I was there on the ground, and I can tell you that pedestrians were allowed to freely move through that protest to get to their destination. In terms of the police there, the police, in most cases, it was quiet. Only when the police attempted, there were several attempts to clear the debris from the road. And whenever they did that about 3 or 4 times while I was there. And whenever they did that, it angered, it further inflamed the situation. It created a hostile situation whenever they did that. You had projectiles being tossed, etc., and in an effort to push back the police. But once they were back, everything went back to a calm nature. And so that is how it went throughout the day. You had the police there, you had the fire service there, of course, the commander and other senior ranks were out there. I said I spoke with the family, but I also spoke with the police and urging both sides to, have some bit of restraint, especially the police. I urge them to have some restraint, and so that there isn't any incident of a protester being shot or anything of that, or a police being injured, and then we have an escalation. So that is what I was doing out there. Of course, I am the regional rep, and so I have to be out there representing the people. First and foremost, I stand on the side of the people. I understand their frustration, I understand their anger. And so I thought it fit to go out there and speak with them, and also to, be that link between them and the police to ensure that things don't get out of hand in any way.
And the police cleared the road early the next morning, and there was no continuation yesterday or today of the protests. Are we to understand that the people wanted a one-day protest, they made their point, and they are now moving on to the future? Is that correct?
No, that is not totally accurate.
Okay, tell us.
First of all, when they went, my understanding is I wasn't there, but reports coming to me was that the Army, a joint service force, the Army and police went in about 3:30, and there were still a few persons out there, not at the bridge exactly, but within the vicinity. And they fired some shots. They fired some, I don't know whether it's blanks or whatever it is, but they fired some shots, and the persons there dispersed, and so they were allowed to clear the debris there. Today they had, well, last night they had some clashes with the police and small groups. Throughout the day today, the police occupied several strategic points throughout the community. Police, the joint service force rather, and they continue to have clashes. In fact, there was an attempt to block the bridge again, but that attempt was thwarted by the police. But they continue to have clashes with small groups. I don't believe we are seeing the end of it. The residents are still angry, and the mere police presence within the community would continue to anger them. I don't believe that it's doing any good, except that you have a free flow or something resembling a free flow of traffic. But the fact that this act was committed by a police, and to see the presence of police with long guns in their community, it would only keep that flame going. My suggestion is that the government do the right thing. Let good sense prevail in this matter. The demand is very simple and straightforward. Institute a murder charge.
That is the demand of the people of Dartmouth as they react to what Attorney at Law Nigel Hughes on the show last night said. It was really an abomination. Not his words, these are my words. But saying that all the evidence, and he laid it out there last night for us, all the evidence points to the fact that this is murder. And more importantly, Attorney at Law, you said it is not within the power of the DPP to determine whether it's murder or manslaughter. That should be left for the judge and jury. The DPP is not judge and jury. That was the salient point that was made last night by Attorney at Law Nigel Hughes. All of you all were here and heard him say that. I did not, and I am not making it up. Good night, everybody who's joining us. Whether you join us from New York, I noticed people from Antigua and Barbuda. Lawrence is in the audience. Somebody from Kurukuru, and others are making the point that Rhonda is not the only Denhamstel person in the audience. They got plenty other Denhamstel people in the audience. Good night, Denhamstel, one of my favorite villages. Welcome to Politics 101. Let me bring in Kidaki and Rickford on what happened in Dartmouth. Kidaki, you were an advocate of protest. When you saw the protest erupting 2 days ago in Dartmouth, what were your thoughts, and what are your thoughts there?
Long overdue. Long overdue. That the time it took for the police, the authorities, the government to recommend and institute the charge of manslaughter in this issue, in my mind, could have been influenced by the behavior of the Dartmouthians, yes, the equipments, right? Sometimes you have to stoke a flame for it to cook your pot fast enough. And so for as much as the residents of Dartmouth and surrounding communities, I guess, remain calm, the government took their time to concoct all they needed to concoct, and then come with this stupidity charge, to say the least. This manslaughter charge. So in my mind, protest was long overdue. And in this particular instance, we cannot expect the government, the authorities, to change their position with this manslaughter charge if we're going to see one-day protest and half-day protest. And what some may argue is disorganized protest. My position is that there needs to be, I mean, if you put a committee of management for the protest together, then you might be exposing people. But I believe that there must be a think tank behind this protest. And the government must be given deadlines. For every day that you don't institute the murder charge, we are going to step up the ante. Something else is going to get bad. We're not only going to block this one bridge, but we are going to block other bridges or other pathways. We're going to disrupt school. We're going to disrupt government offices. People have to just be determined about the cause and get this administration to do what they should do from the inception. You know, I like to say history is a great teacher. I said the same thing with the arms and ammunition. Let us go back. The police has a record of shooting people and then covering it up with the knowledge of the government, right? We Buxtonians have on record the shooting of Shaka Blair in his home in similar fashion. I always say up until now, I don't think that case was ever concluded in the courts. Right? Same cock and bull, and the former crime chief. I always quote him when I talk about Shacklebert. Said that while he was waxing lyrical in the public about the file gone to the DPP and this is what is happening and that is what is happening, in reality, he had never ever seen the file for that case. And that is the MO of the police under the PPP. I also said when the announcement was made about these charges, this manslaughter charge, I won't be surprised if it gets bungled. Attorney at law Nigel Hughes last night basically said the same thing in different language. That ballistics go missing and statements go missing and witnesses don't turn up and so on when the police is involved. And so I'm saying, unless the people of Dartmouth and all right-thinking Guyanese, people who really desire to see justice in this situation, really protest in a sustained and organized manner, you can't expect justice. You can't expect the charges to change to murder, and you can't expect that it will come to its logical conclusion in the courts. So my position is, protest is justified. What I want to see is other communities, other parts of this country come out in solidarity with the Dartmouthians and say to the government and the institutions of this country, this is one too much. We're not going to stand for this nonsense. Rick Ford is in the US. The Black Lives Matter, when what's his name met his demise with the knee on his neck. It's not one section of the US protesting to get the end result which they got. Guyanese have to wake up. We have to start seeing ourselves as our brothers keepers, and we have to recognize ourselves as a Guyanese community. And we have to stand together to get what we justly deserve. Justice in this and every other instance of the police doing this nonsense.
The voice there and the opinions of Kedaki Amsterdam, always an advocate for sustained protests, and certainly the people of Dartmouth and their Sequibo may welcome and will welcome the encouragement. And I always remember that old lady in the village who said, "Picnic, bush gatties. Picnic, bush gatties. Picnic, bush gatties." Protest. Sherrod, let's do it. I can't do the Sherrod laugh. No, I can't. I can never do Sherrod laugh. However, Bush got is protest is important. It's a constitutional right that must be exercised. But protest is not a stupid man. Protest get brains and sense. Teacher George used to say, "We give the border Allah, not really." You're gonna look for Yeg, you're not find Yeg. Just some old advice to add to my brother Kidaki. Rick Ford, I mean, use a protest man too. Use a protest man too. Was your heart warm when the people of Dartmouth, without any advice from you, me, Kidaki, came months ago and said to the world, "We understand you."
Well, my first comment is, I want to make a number of points. My first comment is an advice to the people of Dartmouth and Guyana. You have a right, as you just said, Dr. Hines, you have a right to protest. It's a constitutional right. It's part of your civil liberties. And we see that the PP government is taking steps to outlaw protests. They're trying to use the Guyana police force to outlaw protests and the Guyana police force to outlaw dissent. So you can't talk, else you get arrested. Or if you protest, you get arrested. That's the society we're heading to, an autocratic society. But there's a more dangerous thing. King cutters and East Indians of the PUP can protest. Black people can't protest, or Amerindians can't protest, or East Indians who don't support the PUP can't protest, or they'll get arrested. So apart from the fact that it's an autocratic regime, an apartheid regime that they're building in Guyana, is also an ethnocracy where they're continually empowering their own ethnic collective to exercise dominance in the society. The second thing I want to say is that Guyanese also have to remember that they're their brother's keeper. Kadaki made reference to George Floyd. Everybody recognized the inhumanity which was meted out to George Floyd that caused his death. It is the inhumanity, the indignity of putting your knee on a man's neck while he lay on the floor, on the road, urinating himself and calling for his mother. That's what drove this country into anger. And white people, black people, brown people, pink people, Asians, everybody came out because they saw the inhumanity in the murder of George Floyd. When I look at the evidence as laid out by Nigel, I didn't get to hear it the show last night. When I look at evidence, one, this man was not a wanted man. He was not a criminal. The police apparently, allegedly, were directed to go to his home with a motive. They didn't knock on the door or say, call the phone and say, Mr. Boston, you wanted, come down to the precinct, you guys say police station. Nothing of the sort. Why was that? Why was he treated like Breonna Taylor, which is the woman here in Kentucky where they just barged her home and shot her down? They entered his home unlawfully without a warrant. That's a major aggravating circumstance. Two, they entered the home not lawfully. They didn't go to the door or anything. They technically broke into the home. Whether or not they broke a door, they broke into the home. They entered unlawfully without permission. They went in there, guns blazing. They shot him. All of that is premeditation. All of that is premeditation. And then when they shot him, they were callous and indifferent. They took his body out and left his body in the yard. While they pretend to search the home. For what? God only knows. We don't know what they were searching for. But they left him there to die and then pretend to be taking him to the hospital. And in addition to that, they knew they had done something unlawful because the police force issued a misleading statement, lying about the circumstances.
About the circumstances. And Attorney at Law went over all of that evidence last night. Laying out the case for us. And I do endorse what you and Kenaki said, that we need to keep up the pressure. That it is Frederick Douglass who said, power concedes nothing without a demand. And protest is perhaps the most powerful form of demand. Nelson Mandela said, when they were throwing him in jail, and he made that speech from the courthouse, he said, there comes a time in the life of a nation when you are left with but two choices: submit or demand. And I want to join with my brothers here tonight to say the days of submitting are gone. We have to demand, and there are various forms of demanding justice. There are various forms. Tonight, we are here. All of us, all 1,200, 300, 400, or 500 of us, we are here tonight making a demand. We are here tonight protesting. The people of Dartmouth are on the streets. The most we can do is to give them our solidarity. That's why I call this show tonight, for us to give them solidarity. They need our solidarity. Whether we are in New York or California or Boston or Eversham on the quarantine or West for Peace, they need our solidarity. If we can give them strength, they will know what to do because they are there in the firing line. I want to say that. I want to say, as a protest man, I can write the book on protest. I've been doing it forever. And Teacher Chad said, breaking the border, Nadia Yele, never lay out the path which you are going to go for the enemy. Do them like the people of Dartmouth do. When they least expect, they wake up in the morning on the road. Them people got sense. So gather our solidarity. And wherever we are, we give them the solidarity from where we are. They are at ground zero and they know what to do. We must give them the solidarity. I want to put the whatever strength this show has, Politics 101, I want to put it at the disposal of the people of Dartmouth. Sherwin?
Dr. Hines, I want to make two quick points, important points. Quickly, I want to address the issue with police. Because last night, Sherwin mentioned they were shooting. Someone called me from Dartmouth, a woman. She was, you could hear the fear in her voice. She said she has a daughter, and the girl was screaming. I was hearing the shots, and she said, and I was hearing the cursing, and they were going house to house. And she said they were asking who were the organizers of the protests. And they had arrested, she said they had arrested one person. The Guyana police force at this day and age doesn't know how to manage protests. What about if the Guyana force has real protests, like a Black Lives Matter protest? All they know to do, and they didn't do this during the Granger administration, they are following the instructions of the PPP, shoot them, kill them, shoot them down, stop them from protesting. The other thing is, they have the audacity to, and the media, the ethnic media in Guyana, talk about the Dartmouth protesters in the most derogatory terms. They're criminals, they're thugs. What about the damn victim? Speak about him. Speak about the pain of the family. Every time Black people protest, they call us thugs and criminals. And that is coming from the PPP leadership. But what about the victim? What about Mr. Boston's family? What about their sorrow and their grief? So you mean to tell me that they must go into this man's house, murder him, and Black people mustn't say anything? But the East Indians can protest. The cane cutters can protest and get $250,000. But you murder a Black man in Dartmouth, and you must shut up. Because if you talk about justice, we're going to gun you down. And I want the members of the Guyana Police Force and the Guyana Defense Force to know that there are now international laws under which people can lodge complaints with evidence and they can be prosecuted. So I want the Commissioner of Police to know that. I want the Assistant Commissioner of Police to know that. I want the Crime Chief to know that. And I want the Minister of Home Affairs to know that there are now laws in place for atrocities such as shooting down and abusing innocent people who are exercising their right to dissent and right to protest. Thanks for the time.
Chowin, let me bring you in. Go right ahead. Go right ahead, Chowin.
Rickford is spot on there. Well, with regards to them going house to house. I know for sure that they were moving house to house last night, very late, maybe about 2 o'clock in the morning, and they did arrest someone. I actually spoke with the relatives of that person that was arrested, and I fully understand the circumstances under which he was arrested. Now, this guy was in his home, they were going house to house, and they made this claim that he was one out in the streets earlier, 1 hour earlier, who was tossing projectiles and so at the police. Now, this was a man in his bed, and to my mind, easily we could have ended up with a situation similar to that of Boston, because you have them barging into people's home, breaking into their homes, pushing down their doors or pushing open the doors, and then are attempting to arrest persons. So easily we could have ended up with a similar situation. The the family approached them after they arrested the individual. The family approached them, and to their minds, they had conflicting stories. The police and the army had various, different stories, conflicting stories in the view of the family. Um, they nevertheless took him down to the station, and I would have asked some persons to assist the family, go along with them to the station this morning. And what we gathered was that there was no report, no official report from the police. So this guy spent the entire night, or what remained of the night, in the custody of the police in the lockups, and there was no report at the station for him, nothing whatsoever. And he basically was being held against his will in a police station with no report from the police as it relates to what exactly he did. So,
He was kidnapped.
well,
That's a kidnap.
some sense you can put it that way. With the police, they falsely claimed to the family that they would have arrested 6 other persons, but when they got to the station with this gentleman, there was nobody under arrest there except him. And so there were a number of conflicting stories. They saw some umbrella in his home, and they claimed that the person they were looking for had a black umbrella. In my view, they made up this story as they went along. They went into his home and he had an umbrella, and then suddenly that became the basis for arresting him. So it was quite clear what they were doing. I believe also that the police were not, well, it wasn't too much of the police. There were 6 soldiers there and 3 police. And the police, the soldiers rather, are not very much trained in these kinds of operations to go into people's home and that kind of thing. So I don't know why they took part in that aspect of the activity, because from my learning, from my understanding, is that the police are the ones that's supposed to be conducting this, and the army is just there to provide some muscle, so to speak. So I just wanted to say that. So for
Sorry, has the gentleman been released?
yes, he has.
Okay.
We placed significant pressure on the police forces. We placed significant pressure on them, and eventually that person was released. There was no basis for him being arrested, and so I think we made that point crystal clear to the police force, and so he was released. There was no evidence.
So the protest is under attack by the police.
Yes, the police, the joint service, there are a number
the joint service.
Army
the state has brought down the might on the people of Dartmouth.
For justice, because they want justice.
Huh?
Exactly. Rather than fixing the problem, solving the problem, they're creating a bigger problem. I keep hammering home that point.
Sharon, I don't want to put you on the spot, but as your party, which is the biggest party in the opposition, have you all intervened in that situation at Dartmouth to give some, guidance to what is happening there as people are defending themselves against the assault of the state?
Well, our intervention, we have to and we must, wherever, and this is not only for the people of Dartmouth, wherever you have these kind of cases showing their ugly heads, we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to the people to represent them. And so I have been doing that. I was on the ground speaking with the family and the police, as I have indicated. I spoke with the police to also ensure that we don't have something going overboard with persons being shot, etc. But we did give representation to the for the family. We did make representation, as I said this morning, for the person that was arrested, because we thought that they were just bullying that family and there was no basis for that arrest. We examined it carefully because we didn't want, as a party, to get involved into something where there was a criminal act per se. But we were clearing our heads that this was an abuse of power by the police, and once there is that abuse, we will step in.
Kilaki Amsterdam, the dynamics of protests is not, as we know, as you know, us going out in the street and protesting. As you protest, you have to expect that the police is going to respond, and that the dynamics become much more complex and depends on where it goes. It's that will determine whether the protest spread from one place to the other and so on. You have been calling for people from other communities to join the protest. What have you been hearing from people on the East Coast and other places about what's going on in Dartmouth? Are they paying attention to what's going on?
Well, certainly, they're paying attention. But let me say this. Let me say this as perhaps a word of advice to those who are involved in protests now. Knowing the fact that the police, at least in this instance, has been going to people's home to identify who are the people on the protest line in the course of the day. Excuse me. The time has come in this country where those who follow international protests and so on, you have to take a page or two out of other people's book. Start wearing masks to protest. Cover your faces. Hide your identity. As a matter of fact, the SWAT team went to in Boston's home all in cloak and dagger. You couldn't identify any of them. And so protesters have to start doing that. Protesters have to start disguising, hiding their identity. So when they come, let them look for the needle among the haystack, right? That's one. And yes, people across the country have been paying attention to what is happening. Whether or not they're agitated enough to start their own protest in solidarity is a different thing. My position is that community leaders and national political leaders and so on have to give direction, whether clandestinely or not. Directions have to be given to people, right? Quite frankly, if you ask me, the national politicians ought to be able to call their lieutenants in the communities and say, organize something. Right? Organize something. Because people, if you observe what's happening in this country, people are not generally acting off of their own accord. They're waiting for leadership. Right? The Dartmouthians, that is gone zero. That is where the heart is. And so, yes, you end up, you know, somebody will get angry and they will react and others will join them because that is where the heart is. That is gone zero. But then other leaders around the country, you have to say to their followers, organize something. Because my position has always been, if you have pockets of protests around the country surrounding the same issue, then I want to see the authorities find enough soldiers and police to send to harass people. Right? As far as I understand it, the soldiers are generally there to intimidate. Because we know they're trained to kill and they have all these whatever uniforms and so on. They're usually sent there to intimidate. But soldiers have no right in a civilian issue as protest. And so people must push them to the brink. Let them step out of line and do something to protesters so you can take them before the court and the International Court of Justice and so on. Put them to the test. And that is one of the things Guyanese leaders are failing at, in my mind, or Guyanese as citizens. We have to let these people understand what their roles are, right? The army must be made to either stay in the barrack or keep the hands off for protesters, because that's not their role. That is not their role. Protesters must push them to the brink. That's my position. Leaders must organize solidarity protests all over the place and stretch the resources of these agencies thin. Because also, the more protest that is active, the more active protests you have going on, the more eyes you have from the international community. And that's my recommendation. People are paying attention, but whether or not they're getting the clarion call that this is a fight for you and you ought to be involved too is a different thing.
Mr. Franklin Boston, obviously from Dartmouth, is saying it is Dartmouthians. And I suppose he's trying to tell you, Buxtonian, that it is not Dartmouthians, it's Dartmouthians. Now you inventing a word that may get you in trouble and get you charged like Sharon Duncan for calling people Dartmouthians. Be careful. Thank you very much, Mr. Boston, for the correction. These pompous Bostonians think they know everything. Thanks for correcting me.
People.
Our sister Novella tonight is saying that we got to spread the protest. And, you know, one of the things is that this kind of information needs to come out. You're not going to see it on the front page of the Chronicle or the Kaieteur News or the Stabroek News. If they report it at all in Kaieteur News and Stabroek News, it's not going to be on the front page. And so it is on these shows that we need this kind of information, Brother Charwin. That kind of information is what we need. We need to know that they're going around. Look, one of the most important things about protests is to let the world know you're protesting. If you're protesting in Dartmouth and nobody knows what's happening, they corner you there and they squeeze you. As soon as 3 or 4 people gather, get it out. When they arrest 5 people, come out and let us know. Let us spread the word. Let us spread the word. One of the things that power don't like is exposure. All right? And so if they're going about house to house, take pictures, send them to me, send them to Rick Ford, so we can put them on these shows and expose them. That is protest too. We often again
go live.
Say it again for me. Say yes, Kraki.
I said as soon as they show up, go live.
Yes. You all have to understand, we have to understand that protest is not just where you are out there with the protest. There's a lot that goes with protest. Exposure. Let the world know what is going on. Send it far and wide. So that's something else that we need to know. Remember that 17-year-old girl. Remember that 17-year-old girl in Minneapolis with a cell phone. She made the difference. You may be a 17-year-old in Dartmouth, but you're not out there ducking, but you can use your cell phone and have evidence and send it to us so that we can spread it all over the world. That is protest too. This is Politics 101, and tonight we are doing Protest 101. But we gotta go because Sharon is waiting. You all hear how this thing can got it? Sharon, this is for the Jacobats and things. So here what we gonna do, gentlemen. I don't want Sharon to call me a Jacobat and a trench rapper because
Yeah, they might have to sue him.
so I'm gonna give you all the opportunity for closing, and Sharon, I'm appointing you as the what do you call it in journalism, as the correspondent for Politics 101. Every week you come here and tell us what's happening in Dartmouth, whether there's protest or not protest. Deal? If you want me to talk to the comrade leader, to tell I have his number.
I'm always happy to come on your program as long as my schedule I can work with it. I'm more than happy to come here and represent the people and to let the public know what is going on and what positions our party is taking on whatever matter. So
yes,
I'd be
and
more
people
than happy to be on the program.
And we want some people from Dartmouth who are brave enough to come on to these programs, to come on and talk. It's the family, whether it's members of the community. Want them to come. I see my sister. She's where's she from? I think she's from Two Village. Down. When I used to go to Dartmouth and do work in Dartmouth about 5 or 6 years ago, she was one of the persons. I don't want to call her name because people, he didn't give me permission to come, but she know who I'm talking about. I did a lot of good work. In those days, I was active in Coffee 250, and she would remember, she was our point person here. We had a lecturer from the University of Guyana who had gone down and lived for a year in the community, and we really did some beautiful work there. And a lot of that work didn't play out well, and I don't want to say because that's opening up another kind of work. Exactly, you know what I'm talking about, and so on. But we want some other people from the community, Sharon, to come on, ordinary people, come on to these programs and give their own testimony. So that's part of your homework. But we are not going to let this issue die. We are not going to let it die. Closing thoughts, and then let's go to Sherrod, because he's waiting. We encroaching on his time. Starting with you, Sharon.
Okay, I want to express my sympathy and solidarity with the people of Dartmouth once again. I want to urge them to remain united in this struggle for justice. Know what is the objective, what is the task at hand, and remain united in their fight in achieving that objective within, of course, within the confines of the law. I want you to know that.
Sorry. Go ahead, I'm Shaman.
As a party, we will not sit idly by and just accept these injustices. So I want to assure them that we will be behind them in whatever way we can in terms of offering the kind of support. We're not saying that we're supporting anything illegal, but this is a fight, a clear fight for justice. And so we must give support as we see that might become necessary. And I would want to urge the government also to remove that cloud of distrust, that cloud that is over this case, and do the right thing. Do the right thing. Charge the shooter for murder. That is all we ask at this point in time. There are a number of other things that we would want also, which I didn't get to mention on the program, but I think we can look at it at a future program.
Kidaki Amsterdam, closing thoughts.
I saw your good friend, the columnist, I think, writing perhaps today, that the time of slow fire, more fire has passed. Well, I want to say to the Dartmouthians, or them Dartmouth people, you hear? It doesn't have to be slow fire, more fire. but it has to be consistent. It is important that this protest, once started, remains active. No retreat, no surrender. It is important that it remains active. It must be kept on the front burner. And this is the day of social media and smartphones. Go live with your smartphones. Let it be all over the world that Dartmouthans, I got a little tight tongue, Alex, excuse me if I don't get it right. But them Dartmouth people are continuing to protest this issue. That's first and foremost. Secondly, Guyanese must recognize that this is an issue that has always been affecting the society once the PPP sits in political office. And we have been accepting it for too long. Too many of our brothers and sisters, our citizens, have been killed in these manners, and their murders covered up, whether with political instructions or not. And the government must be held accountable. The agencies of state must be held accountable. And Guyanese are the people who can make them become accountable. For as long as we act in our individual selves, we are going to be plucked out individually. Dartmouth as a community is going to be isolated, and just what the soldiers and the police did last evening or whenever, go house to house and target people. We must not leave our communities by themselves. The country must stand in defense of those who are being oppressed and oppressed. In this instance, every community, every Guyanese community has a responsibility to support the people of Dartmouth as they call for justice for one of our citizens. That's my closing remark. No retreat, no surrender.
Rickford Burke, your closing remarks?
Well, first, thanks for having me on the program. It was good to be here with Kadaki and Sherwin. I want to say to the people of Guyana, we have to stop acting like we're still at the bottom of the slave ship. I don't know what's the intimidation. I don't know why people are so reluctant to exercise their democratic right. I know that people are scared of being shot, but that's what protests are. Protests are, you go out there determined. If you notice in America, congressmen and executives and other politicians go out there and get arrested with the people. It demonstrates solidarity. And Guyanese have to stop sending us messages in America. When are you guys going to do this? And when is Biden going to help up? Get up and help yourselves. Stand up for your right. Now, I noticed the police has been shutting down protests. I want to tell my fellow Guyanese that protest is a constitutional right. The police dare not shut down a protest in Berbice with PPP supporters. They're allowed to do it. But whenever the black people protest, they get shot down like what happened in Number 4 Village when they shot even relatives of the Henry family. Go to court. Sherwin, I want to encourage you. The next time the police comes and shut the protest down, get an attorney, file an injunction, and stop them from shutting down the protest. It's a right. The Constitution says every citizen must be treated equally. You can't have protests in Berbice that go on and no protests in Dartmouth because of different complexion of people. So I want to urge everybody. I stand, my organization, my members of CGID stand in solidarity with the people of Dartmouth. No retreat, no surrender. I want to adopt that theme as well. Stand up and fight for your right. Fight for justice. Don't go there one morning and police and soldier come and you run away in retreat. And I want to again say to the members of the Guyana Defense Force and the police force, especially the black officers that they're using to go and shoot down those same black people. That's your people. Those are your brothers and sisters and parents. Why are you allowing the police force, through its corrupt leaders, to take political instructions for you to go and shoot and kill your own people, your own family? And a day of reckoning will come when you will have to give an account for those same atrocities you're committing against your own people. So I support the protests. I'm urging the people of Dartmouth to go to protest. And there's nothing wrong with blocking a bridge. People block bridges in the democratic world every day. And look at the attitude of the police across the world. In New York here, when there's a protest, the police protect the protesters. If somebody goes and trouble the protesters, they get arrested. It's a constitutional right. It's a fundamental right. And you must exercise it without a hindrance. And that's my message to the people tonight.
Rickford Burke, Kidaki Amsterdam, Sherwin Holder, MP from the Eskimo Coast, weighing in tonight on what has gone on there in Dartmouth. I want to, again, throw the weight of this show behind the protesters, and I want to congratulate the people of Dartmouth for taking the initiative to come onto the streets. They have led the way. It is for us to follow. I want to say that again, that I congratulate the people of Dartmouth for leading the way in coming out and doing what they can do without the cover of the state or the cover of a big political party. It is now for the rest of us to give them the encouragement they need and to give them the support they need. It takes courage to protest. It takes a lot of courage to stand before men with long guns pointed at you. It takes a lot of courage. And the people of Dartmouth have shown courage. And I want to congratulate them. I cannot stop doing that. And I say, wherever the road leads from Dartmouth, it is not for the Dartmouth people to determine. It is for the rest of Guyana to determine. I love you. I love you, people of Dartmouth. Do what you can do in small ways, in big ways, in silent ways, not so silent ways. Undermine the system. That's what is important. And where the road leads is for the rest of us to determine. You, the people of Dartmouth, have struck the first blow. Protest, struggle, and revolution will never be televised. Good night. Good night. Agone. Bye-bye, everybody. And remember $5.2 million of arms headed to Guyana. Be listening to hear what is the story behind it. On for good night.
The customs authorities in Senegal have seized 3 containers of ammunition aboard the Guyana-flagged cargo ship. The authorities estimate that the 3 containers are worth an estimated $5.2 million. The discovery was made in the port of Dakar, but the customs agency did not specify the date it happened. Local reports suggest that the crew is Ukrainian. The authorities, however, have not confirmed this. According to specialist website Vessel Finder, the cargo ship had stopped in northern Italy and Spain's Canary Islands before arriving in the port of Dakar. The ship's final destination is unknown. In June 2021, Senegal's navy seized 8 tons of cannabis from a vessel off the coast of the country.
Please help keep Politics 101 on social media and broadcast television. If you are in North America, please donate via Cash App or PayPal.
If you are in Guyana and the Caribbean and don't have access to Cash App and PayPal, email your pledge to dhines6106@aol.com and we will direct you how to get your donation to us. Thank you in advance for your donation.